Kale Morrow had always been afraid. He was afraid of loud noises. He was afraid of blood. He was afraid of the moment when someone looked at him and expected him to do something important. Most of all, he was afraid of failing when it mattered most. His mother, Sarah Morrow, was the opposite of afraid. She was the best healer on the frontier world of Ashvale 7. Aliens came from distant star systems to visit her small clinic. She had saved lives that other doctors had given up on. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. When death walked into her clinic, she looked it in the eye and told it to wait. Kale was not like her. He worked in the clinic too, but he did the small jobs. He cleaned the tools. He counted the medicine bottles. He organized the shelves and swept the floors. These were safe tasks. Nobody died if he made a mistake while sweeping. 2 years ago, a Kethvari merchant had collapsed in the waiting room. The alien's skin had turned gray. Its breathing had stopped. Kale had been the only one there at that moment. His mother was in the back room, too far away to hear. Kale had frozen. His feet had become heavy. His hands had refused to move. He had stood there, watching the Kethvari die on the floor, unable to do anything at all. His mother had arrived just in time. She had saved the merchant. But Kale still remembered the look in her eyes afterward. Not anger. Something worse. Disappointment that she tried to hide. He was 23 years old now, and he had accepted the truth about himself. He was not brave. He was not strong. He was just the healer's son who was too scared to heal. On the morning that changed everything, Kale was doing what he always did on supply days. He was driving his old transport vehicle across the wastelands outside the settlement. The land here was dead and gray. Radiation from an ancient war had poisoned the soil long ago. Nothing grew. Nothing lived. But sometimes useful things could be found in the ruins. Kale liked these trips. Out here, alone, nobody expected anything from him. The silence was peaceful. The emptiness was comforting. He could breathe without feeling like he was disappointing someone. He was driving past a ridge of broken rock when he saw something strange metal, twisted and burned, sticking out of the ash like the bones of some giant creature. Kale stopped his vehicle and got out. He walked closer, his boots crunching on the dead ground. The metal was part of a ship. A small one, maybe meant for only one passenger. It had crashed hard. The hull was torn open like paper. He should have turned around. He should have gone home and reported it to the settlement authorities. That would have been the smart thing to do, but something pulled him forward. A feeling he could not explain, like a voice calling his name from very far away. He climbed through the torn hull and into the darkness inside. The smell hit him first. Burned flesh and something else. Something old and strange, like the air before a lightning storm. His eyes adjusted slowly to the shadows. Then he saw it. The creature filled most of the crashed ship. It was massive, at least 4 times his size, with a long serpentine body covered in scales. The scales should have been beautiful. Kale could see hints of color in them, blue and gold and silver, like light trapped in glass. But many of the scales were falling off. The skin beneath was raw and wounded. Wings lay folded against the creature's body. Huge wings, meant for flying through the empty spaces between stars. They were torn now, full of holes. The creature's eyes were closed. Kale thought it was dead. Then the eyes opened. They were like dying suns. Orange and red and gold, burning with an inner fire that was slowly fading. They fixed on Kale with an intelligence that was vast and ancient and completely inhuman. Kale's legs told him to run. His heart told him to run. Every part of his body screamed at him to get out. Get away. Survive. He did not run. Human. The voice was not sound. It appeared directly in his mind, like a thought that was not his own. It was tired. It was in pain. But beneath the exhaustion, there was something powerful. Something that had once commanded empires. You smell of healing, of medicine and care. I sense it on your skin, in your clothes. Cale's mouth was dry. He tried to speak and failed. He tried again. What are you? His voice came out as a whisper. I am. Draken. The word meant nothing to Cale. He had never heard it before. Your kind calls us myths, legends. The dragons who seeded life across the stars. Before your species learned to walk upright. We ruled 1,000 worlds. We were gods. The creature's eyes flickered. The fire in them dimmed for a moment. Now I am dying, alone, far from home. And you are the only one who has found me. Cale looked at the wounds on the creature's body. They were not normal injuries. They glowed with a sickly light. Radiation poisoning, maybe? Or something worse. Something he had no name for. I'm not a healer, he said. Not really. I just help my mother. I clean things. I organize supplies. I can't. You are what I have. The creature's mental voice was growing weaker. Help me, small human. Or watch me fade into nothing. The choice is yours. Cale stood in the darkness of the crashed ship. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard, you could hear it in his ears. He thought about the Kethvari merchant. He thought about freezing. He thought about his mother's hidden disappointment. He thought about walking away from this creature and spending the rest of his life knowing he had left something to die alone. The creature watched him, waiting. Its ancient eyes held no hope, no expectation. It had already accepted that he would leave. It had already accepted its own death. Cale took a deep breath. I'll come back, he said. I'll get supplies, medicine. I don't know if any of it will help, but I'll try. The creature blinked slowly. Something changed in its eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion. Why? Cale did not have an answer. He did not understand it himself. He only knew that he could not walk away. Not this time. Because you're still alive, he said finally. And maybe that's enough of a reason. He turned and climbed out of the crashed ship. He walked back to his vehicle. He drove toward home, his mind racing with questions he could not answer. Behind him, in the darkness of the ruined ship, the creature called Virith watched him go. For the first time in many centuries, the ancient Draken felt something it had almost forgotten. Curiosity about a small, frightened human who had chosen not to run. Cale returned to the crashed ship that same night. He had waited until his mother was asleep. Then he had crept into the clinic's supply room and filled a bag with everything he thought might help. Bandages, antiseptic, painkillers, burn cream. He did not know if any of it would work on a creature like Virith, but he had to try something. His hand shook as he loaded the supplies into his vehicle. His heart pounded as he drove through the darkness toward the wastelands. Every part of him was afraid. But he kept driving anyway. The Draken was still alive when Cale arrived. Barely. You came back. The voice in Cale's mind was weaker than before. I did not expect that. I said I would. Cale knelt beside the massive creature and opened his bag. I brought medicine. I don't know if it will help. It will not. Cale stopped. What? Your medicines are made for simple creatures. Humans. Other young species. My body is different. Your treatments will do nothing. Cale felt his hope collapse. He had risked everything to come here, and it was pointless. He was useless, just like he had always been. But then Virith continued. However, you have knowledge. You have access to more knowledge. Perhaps you can learn what might actually help me. I'm not smart enough, Cale said. I'm not a real healer. I just assist my mother, then become more. The words hung in the air between them. Cale looked at the dying creature, at the wounds that glowed with sickly light, at the scales falling away like dead leaves. "Tell me about your body," he said quietly. "Tell me how you work. Maybe I can figure something out." That night was the first of many. Kale began stealing time. He visited Virith every night after his mother went to sleep. During the day, he searched through the clinic's archives. His mother had files on hundreds of alien species, medical research from across the galaxy, information that was supposed to be restricted. He read everything he could find. Draken physiology was unlike anything else in the known universe. They had 3 hearts that beat in a pattern like music. Their blood was hot enough to burn through metal. Their cells existed partially in dimensions that human science could not even measure. Kale failed constantly. The first treatment he tried made Virith's condition worse. The second did nothing at all. The third caused the Draken to roar in pain so loud that Kale's ears rang for hours. "I'm sorry," Kale said after each failure. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what I'm doing." Obviously, Virith's mental voice was harsh. "You are a child playing with forces you cannot understand. Your species has only existed for a moment. Mine ruled the stars when your ancestors were still swimming in oceans." The words hurt. But Kale did not stop coming back. Night after night, he tried new approaches. He asked Virith questions about Draken biology, questions that no human had ever had the chance to ask. He took notes. He made theories. He tested them carefully. Slowly, he began to understand that the breakthrough came 3 weeks after he found Virith. Kale was examining the glowing wounds when he noticed something strange. The light they produced was not steady. It flickered in a pattern, a rhythm, like something was pulling at the wounds from somewhere else. "These injuries," Kale said slowly, "they're not just physical, are they?" Virith's eyes focused on him with new attention. "What do you mean?" "The way they glow. The pattern of it. It's like something is trying to pull you apart from the inside. Not your body. Something deeper." Kale paused, searching for the right words. "Your connection to time itself." The silence that followed was heavy. "How did you know that?" Virith's voice was different now. Surprised. Almost impressed. "I didn't know. I guessed." Kale sat back on his heels. "Am I right?" "Yes." The Draken's massive head lowered slightly. "I was attacked by creatures that exist outside of normal time. They tore something inside me. My connection to my own timeline. I am dying because I am being erased from existence itself." Kale felt cold. This was beyond anything he could fix. Beyond anything his mother could fix. Beyond anything human medicine could touch. But he did not give up. "There must be someone who understands this," he said. "Someone who deals with problems like this. There are organizations, groups that study time and its wounds. But they would never help a Draken. My kind has too many enemies. Tell me about them anyway." Virith told him about the Consortium of Echoes, a shadowy group that hunted temporal anomalies across the galaxy. Scientists and warriors and seekers of forbidden knowledge. Kale's mother had worked with them once. Before Kale was born, he had found references to them in her restricted files. He made a decision. That night, Kale sent a message to the Consortium. He told them about Virith. He told them about the temporal wounds. He asked for help, thought it was a risk. A terrible risk. He did not know who might intercept the message. He did not know what enemies might be listening. But Virith was dying, and Kale was out of options. While he waited for a response, something changed between them. Virith had been cold and dismissive at first. The Draken saw humans as lesser creatures, young and weak and barely worth noticing. But as the weeks passed, as Kale kept returning despite every failure, something shifted. One night, Virith asked, "Why do you keep coming back?" Kale thought about the question for a long time. I don't know, he admitted. I'm scared every time I come here. I'm scared that I'll fail again. I'm scared that you'll die and it will be my fault because I wasn't good enough. Then why continue? Because you're alive. The words came out simply, honestly. And I can't just watch something die when I might be able to help. Even if the chance is small. Even if I'm probably going to fail. I have to try. Virith was quiet for a long moment. My kind valued power, the Drekken said finally. Strength, conquest, the ability to take what we wanted and destroy what stood in our way. We believed that made us great. We were wrong. Kale looked up, surprised. What you have, small human. This stubborn refusal to abandon hope. This foolish persistence in the face of certain failure. We never understood it. We thought it was weakness. The ancient eyes met Kale's. Perhaps it is something else entirely. Kale felt something warm bloom in his chest. It was not courage. It was not confidence. But it was something. A small light in the darkness of his fear. He did not know that his message had been intercepted by more than just the consortium. He did not know that enemies were already on their way. He only knew that for the first time in his life, he was doing something that mattered, and he was not going to stop. The ships appeared in the sky 3 days later. Kale was in the clinic, counting medicine bottles, when he heard people screaming outside. He ran to the window and looked up. Dark shapes were descending through the clouds. Military vessels. Armed and dangerous. They were not the consortium. The ships landed at the edge of the settlement. Soldiers poured out. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black stones. Their armor was covered in symbols that Kale did not recognize, but he knew what they were. Vethkai. Virith had told him about them. 10,000 years ago, the Drekken had conquered the Vethkai homeworld. They had enslaved the species for centuries. When the Drekken Empire finally collapsed, the Vethkai had sworn revenge. They had spent 10,000 years hunting the last Drekken, killing them one by one. They called themselves the Purifiers, and now they were here. Kale watched from the window as the soldiers spread through the settlement. They were searching for something, for someone, for a dying dragon hidden in the WSTEL and the S. His message had been intercepted. He had led the hunters straight to Virith. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. He grabbed the edge of the window to keep from falling. This was his fault. His foolish attempt to help had brought death to his home. He had to warn Virith. He had to do something. Kale grabbed a bag and started filling it with supplies. Medicine, water, anything that might help. His hands were shaking so badly he kept dropping things. Kale. He spun around. His mother was standing in the doorway. Her face was pale. Her eyes were serious. "What are you doing?" she asked. Kale tried to think of a lie. He could not. "There's someone in the wastelands," he said. "Someone I've been helping. Those soldiers are here to kill them. The Drekken." Kale stared at her. "You knew?" "I suspected. I noticed the missing supplies. I noticed you leaving at night." Sira stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "I also noticed that you stopped freezing, that your hands became steady, that you started reading xenobiology texts in your free time." Kale did not know what to say. "Show me," his mother said. They drove to the crashed ship together. The Vethkai soldiers were still searching the settlement. They had not yet reached the wastelands. Virith was waiting. The Drekken's condition had worsened. More scales had fallen away. The glowing wounds were spreading, but those ancient eyes were still alert. They fixed on Sira as she climbed into the wrecked ship. Sira Morrow. The voice in her mind was heavy with recognition. "I know your name. You worked with the consortium. You studied my kind. Sira's face showed nothing. That was a long time ago. Not to me. For beings like us, 30 years is a single breath. Kale watched his mother approach the dying Drekken. She moved carefully, with the same calm focus she brought to every patient. She examined the wounds. She touched the remaining scales gently. Temporal damage, she said quietly. I've seen this before, once. She turned to look at Kale. You figured this out by yourself? I had to, Kale said. Nothing else made sense. Something changed in his mother's eyes. Pride, maybe. Or surprised Dodd before she could respond. They heard sounds from outside. Engines, voices. The Vethkai had found them. Kale climbed out of the ship and saw soldiers approaching across the gray wasteland. There were dozens of them, maybe 100. Their weapons were raised. Dodd at the front walked a single figure, taller than the others, older. Scars covered half his face. He moved with the confidence of someone who had killed many times and planned to kill again. Human, the scarred Vethkai called out. His voice was rough and cold. We know what you are hiding. Step aside. Give us the monster. You and your mother can live. Kale's legs felt weak. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely think. This was the moment. The moment when he froze and failed, just like he always did. He thought about the Kethvari merchant. He thought about standing paralyzed while death approached. He thought about Virith, alone in the darkness, watching him with those dying sun eyes. No, the word came out small, almost too quiet to hear. The scarred Vethkai laughed. What did you say? Kale clenched his fists. He forced himself to stand straight. He forced himself to look at the monster in front of him. No. Louder this time. You can't have them. My name is Torek. The scarred soldier stepped closer. I have killed 17 Drekken in my lifetime. I have burned their bones and scattered their ashes across empty moons. Do you understand what you are protecting? They are not gods. They are monsters who enslaved my people for centuries. That was 10,000 years ago, Kale said. Virith didn't do those things. They are Drekken. That is enough. Torek raised his weapon. Last chance, human. Step aside or die with the monster. Kale looked at the weapon. He looked at the army behind Torek. He looked at his own shaking hands. He was terrified. More terrified than he had ever been in his life. But he did not move. I won't let you kill someone who is already dying, he said. I won't let you murder a patient. That's not who I am. Torek's eyes narrowed. Then you are a fool. He raised his weapon to fire. Sira stepped out of the crashed ship. She stood beside her son. She did not speak. She did not need to adopt mother and son, standing together against an army. Torek hesitated. For just a moment, something flickered in his stone-black eyes. Confusion, maybe. He had expected the humans to run. He had expected fear and surrender. He had not expected this. Kill them, he said to his soldiers. Kill them all. The soldiers raised their weapons. And inside the crashed ship, Virith opened eyes that burned with the last fire of a dying star. The ancient Drekken had watched everything, had heard every word, had seen the small, frightened human refuse to run, refuse to surrender, refuse to save himself. For 10,000 years, Virith had believed that strength was everything. That power was all that mattered. That courage meant the absence of fear. Now, watching Kale Morrow shake with terror and still refuse to step aside, the ancient dragon understood something new. True courage was not the absence of fear. It was the choice to stand anyway. Virith made a decision. The last decision of a very long life. The Drekken reached out with their mind and touched Kale's consciousness. Forgive me, small human. This will hurt. And then everything changed. Fire poured into Kale's mind that it was not like anything he had ever felt before. Heat and light and power, ancient beyond understanding, flooding through his thoughts like a river breaking through a dam. He screamed. He could not help it. The sensation was too much for a human brain to contain. "I am sorry," Virith's voice echoed in his head, "but I will not let you die for me. Not like this." Kale felt his body move without his command. He felt himself rise from the ground, lifted by energy that crackled along his skin. His eyes burned with golden light. His hands trailed fire. The Vethkai soldiers stumbled backward. Torek's weapon fell from his fingers. "What is this?" The scarred hunter demanded. "What are you doing?" Kale did not answer. He could not. Virith's consciousness was wrapped around his own, ancient and vast and completely overwhelming. The Draken was seeing through his eyes, moving through his body, channeling powers that had not been used in 10,000 years. But Kale was still there. Still himself. Still terrified. The merging was imperfect. Virith's power surged through him in waves he could not control. It was like trying to hold an ocean in his hands. The energy spilled out in random bursts, scorching the ground, melting rocks, sending blasts of fire in directions he did not intend. He was not a weapon. He was a drowning man clinging to a star. "Fire!" Torek shouted to his soldiers. "It's just a trick. Kill them." The Vethkai opened fire. Kale moved. Not with skill or training, but with pure, desperate instinct. Virith's power threw up shields of golden light that blocked some of the attacks. Others got through. Pain exploded across his shoulder, his side, his leg. Human blood mixed with dragon fire. He should have fallen. He should have died. He kept moving. Kale threw out his hands and fire erupted from his palms. It scattered the soldiers in front of him. They screamed and ran. But there were so many more behind them. Too many. A blast hit him in the chest and threw him backward. He crashed into the ash and lay there, gasping for breath. The golden light around him flickered and dimmed. "Get up," Virith commanded. "I can't," Kale whispered. "I'm not strong enough. You are standing against an army for a creature you barely know. You are stronger than you believe." Kale pushed himself to his knees, then to his feet. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds. His body screamed with pain. But he stood. The Vethkai came at him again. The battle was chaos. Kale had no technique, no strategy, no plan. He lashed out with bursts of fire that he could barely control. He blocked attacks a moment too late. He took wounds that should have killed him, but he would not fall. Every time the soldiers knocked him down, he rose again. Every time they thought he was finished, he was there, clumsy and desperate, and absolutely refusing to die. He was not winning. He was barely surviving. But he would not stop. The Vethkai began to hesitate. They had expected an easy kill. They had expected a dying Draken and two helpless humans. They had not expected this. What was this human? How was he still standing? Why would he not give up? Torek pushed through his frightened soldiers. His face was twisted with rage and confusion. He strode toward Kale, who was swaying on his feet, barely conscious, the dragon fire reduced to fading embers around his hands. "Enough," Torek said. He drew a long blade from his belt. It hummed with deadly energy. "I don't know what trick you're using, but it ends now." Kale tried to raise his hands. They would not obey. The connection with Virith was fading. The ancient Draken had given everything they had, and it was not enough. Torek stood over him, blade raised. "Why?" The Vethkai demanded. "Why you fight for this creature? What has it given you? What could possibly be worth your life?" Kale looked up at him through blood-filled eyes. He could barely see. He could barely think. He had nothing left, but he could still speak. "Because someone should," he whispered. Because if no one stands up for the dying and the helpless and the alone, what's the point of any of us? Torek stared at him. The blade hung in the air. You are dying for a monster, the hunter said. A creature whose kind enslaved billions. I'm dying for someone who needed help. Kale's voice was barely audible. That's all I know how to do. It was not a warrior's answer. It was not brave or clever or strong. It was simply human. Inside the crashed ship, Virith heard everything. The ancient Draken was fading, their essence nearly gone. But in that moment, they understood something that changed everything. This small, fragile, terrified creature had faced certain death. Not for power, not for glory, not even for survival. Simply because it was right. The Draken had ruled the stars. They had commanded armies. They had believed themselves superior to all other life. They had been wrong. Virith gathered the last of their strength, the very last spark of ancient fire that remained. And they made a choice. The temporal fracture that was killing them, the wound that was erasing them from existence, they pulled it fully into themselves. They used their own fading life as an anchor. They gave everything they had left to create one final burst of power. Not to kill, not to conquer. To save one small human who had taught them what courage truly meant. The explosion of energy threw Torek backward. It threw all the Vethkai backward. It threw reality itself backward. For one impossible moment, time bent and twisted around Kale Morrow. The universe saw him, a frightened healer's son, broken and bleeding, who had stood alone against an army because he could not bear to let someone die without trying to help. The moment passed. The energy faded. The Vethkai soldiers were scattered across the wasteland, stunned and confused. Torek was shouting orders to retreat. Ships were lifting off, carrying the hunters away from something they did not understand. Kale lay in the ash. He was alive when he should not be. He was holding something warm against his chest. It was Virith's essence. The last piece of an ancient god, fading like starlight at dawn. Well done, small human, the voice whispered in his mind. Well done. Kale held on tight and did not let go. Virith died as the sun rose over the wasteland. Kale held them through the final hours. His mother had bandaged his wounds, but he refused to leave the crashed ship. He sat beside the ancient dragon, one hand resting on the few scales that still remained, and listened as Virith spoke into his mind. The Draken's voice was faint now, a whisper from very far away. But they had things to say, and Kale listened to every word. Virith told him about the old empire, about the 1,000 worlds they had ruled, the wars they had fought, the enemies they had crushed. They had been powerful beyond imagination. They had believed that power made them great. We were gods, Virith said. Or so we thought. We took what we wanted. We destroyed what stood in our way. We never stopped to ask if we should. What happened to you? Kale asked softly. To your people? We fell, as all empires fall. Virith's eyes, once bright as dying suns, were now dim and gray. Our arrogance created enemies we could not defeat. Our cruelty turned allies into hunters. In the end, we destroyed ourselves more surely than any outside force ever could. The Draken was quiet for a moment. I have lived for 12,000 years. I have seen the birth of stars and the death of civilizations. I have held more power than your species can imagine. And I have learned nothing. Kale did not understand. Nothing? Not until now. Virith's fading gaze found Kale's face. Not until a frightened human boy taught me what we should have known from the beginning. I didn't teach you anything, Kale said. I just tried to help. Yes, you did. That is the lesson. Virith's body shuddered. Time was running out. I have a gift for you, small human. Not power. Not weapons. Something better. Into Kale's mind came images, locations, star maps, and coordinates. Secrets hidden for 10,000 years. The archives of my people. Knowledge we gathered across centuries. Science and art and history and medicine. The wisdom of an empire, stored in vaults across the galaxy. I give them to you. Kale's breath caught in his throat. Why me? Because you will use them well. Something like a smile touched Virith's thoughts. You will not conquer with what you learn. You will not destroy. You will heal. You will help. You will do what we never could. Use them better than we did, Kale Morrow. Your species might actually be capable of that. The sun rose higher. Golden light spilled into the crashed ship, touching the Drekken's fading scales. For a moment, the colors returned. Blue and gold and silver, beautiful beyond words. I am glad, Virith whispered, that I did not die alone. The light faded. The colors dimmed. The ancient dragon, last of a fallen empire, breathed out one final time and was gone. Kale sat in a silence for a long time. He held the last scale that Virith had given him. It still held warmth, like an ember from a fire that had burned since before humanity existed. His mother found him there an hour later. She did not speak. She sat down beside him and put her arm around his shoulders. They gave me their knowledge, Kale said eventually. The locations of archives across the galaxy. Everything they knew. That's a heavy gift, Sira said. Yes. Kale looked at the scale in his hands. But I think I understand why they gave it to me. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The consortium of Echoes finally arrived, too late to help but very interested in what had happened. They offered Kale a position, training, resources, the chance to become something important. He refused. The frontier settlements heard the story of what had happened. How a healer's son had stood against an army to protect a dying creature. How he had faced certain death rather than abandon someone who needed help. They called him a hero. They called him brave. He did not feel like either of those things. Kale returned to the clinic. He helped his mother treat patients. He organized supplies and cleaned tools and did all the small jobs he had always done. But he was different now. His hands no longer shook. When patients came in bleeding and afraid, he did not freeze. He moved calmly, steadily, the way his mother had always done. He had learned that he could face terror and still choose to act. Sometimes, late at night, he felt something burning in his chest. A spark of dragon fire, left behind like a gift or a memory. It was warm and strange and comforting. He still had nightmares about the battle. He still woke up shaking, covered in sweat, remembering the feeling of weapons tearing through his body. The fear had not disappeared. It probably never would. But now he knew something he had not known before. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was the choice to act anyway. To stand when standing cost everything. To say no when the universe demanded surrender. One evening, Kale walked out to the wasteland. The crashed ship was still there, half buried in ash. Someone would move it eventually, he supposed. But for now, it remained. A monument to something that had mattered. He sat on the ridge overlooking the wreck and watched the stars come out. Virith had told him about those stars, about the worlds that circled them, about the archives waiting to be found, filled with knowledge that could change everything. Medicine that could cure diseases humans had never defeated. Technology that could heal damaged planets. History that could teach the galaxy what happened when power went unchecked. It was more than one person could handle, more than one lifetime could explore. But Kale was not alone. His mother would help. The consortium might help eventually if he asked them properly. And somewhere out there, other humans were looking at the same stars, wondering what secrets they held. We're not gods, Kale said quietly to the empty air. We're not conquerors or rulers or warriors. We're just people who sometimes do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when we're scared, even when it doesn't make sense. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's better. A wind blew across the wasteland, carrying ash and dust and the faint smell of something ancient. Cale imagined he could hear Verith's voice in it, distant and fading, speaking words that sounded almost like goodbye. He smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. Then he stood up and walked home. There were patients waiting at the clinic. People who needed help. That was what he did now. That was who he was. Not a hero. Not a legend. Just a healer's son who had learned that the smallest act of compassion could echo through eternity behind him. The stars burned on, ancient and patient, holding secrets that humanity would one day learn to understand. The Drekken were gone, their empire dust, their power forgotten, but their legacy remained. Not in conquest or destruction, not in one small human who had proven that the universe was worth saving, one frightened choice at a time.